Hey there, Tiktakers! Today we leave you with a compilation of some of the classic myths that we have on the channel and that you like the most. We hope you enjoy it.
Many think that the first ones to exist in Greek mythology were the gods, but that isn't the case. Before the gods, there were the Titans, which were 14. Among them, we can highlight 3. Uranus, the representation of the skies; Gaia, the representation of the earth; and Pontus, the representation of the seas, son of Gaia, spawned by herself without being with a male titan. After being with Uranus, Gaia gave birth to the other 11 titans: Ceus, Creius, Hyperion, Oedipus, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, Phoebe, Tithys, and the last one, Cronos, who we'll be talking about today. He was the black sheep of the family and had an immeasurable hatred for his father. Cronos should not be confused with Kronos, the god of ages, the zodiac, and of course, time itself. Also, you might be thinking, but I know more titans. That's right, but those other titans are offsprings of the ones we already mentioned. It is a shame, but it would take us a long time to talk about all of them, so we will have to leave them for other videos if you guys are interested. Gaia and Uranus didn't get along well, as he didn't allow his children to see the sunlight. Thus, Gaia tried to convince her children to kill his father, but the only one who stepped up to actually do it was Cronos. With the sickle his mother gave him, he took Uranus' life. From this confrontation, several beings came to be. The first were the giants, a species of human-like males of huge size and incredible strength. Then the Erinyes, also known as the Furies. These were human-like females with snakes entangled in their hair, who kept blood and carried torches and whips with them. They were divine forces tasked with the duty of punishing criminals in life. The Meliads as well, also known as the primordial nymphs. These were considered the most ancient nymphs because they were daughters of the skies and the earth, and were the first to walk freely in the world. And finally, Aphrodite, the goddess of love. After defeating Uranus, Cronos imprisoned the beast that emerged due to the battle and ascended to the throne of the gods along with his sister Rhea. And thus started the golden era of his reign, named so because immorality didn't exist then, and everyone did the right thing. Cronos started to have children with Rhea, the first Greek gods: Demeter, Hera, Hestia, Hades, and Poseidon. The thing is, he would swallow them all when they were born. Gross! And so, Gaia warned Cronos that one of his own children would be the one to defeat him. Rhea, tired of this situation, hid their 6th child, Zeus, and gave Cronos a large rock in his place. Cronos swallowed the rock without noticing it wasn't him. Some versions of the story say that Zeus was raised by a goat who lived with some Corybantes, armed dancers who would yell and clap to cover up his crime. Other versions of the tale say that he was raised by nymphs while hanging from a tree. This is because Cronos reigned over the earth and the skies, and thus if Zeus was hanging from a tree, he wouldn't be on earth nor the skies, and Cronos would not be able to detect him. And yet, other versions of the story simply say that Gaia raised Zeus behind Cronos' back. Either way, when Zeus grew up, he faced Cronos and made him regurgitate all of his swallowed siblings, using a powerful poison his grandma Gaia had given him. Zeus also freed the Tiktakers and the Cyclopes from Tartarus, the deep abyss where Cronos had imprisoned them. They created for Zeus his famous lightnings, as well as a powerful trident for Poseidon and an invisibility helmet for Hades. After being freed, they all fought together against Cronos and the rest of the Titans in a war known as the Titanomachy. Once defeated, the Titans were imprisoned in Tartarus. Some of the Titans had a different fate, however, like Atlas, who was sentenced to carry the skies for all eternity. There are different versions of what happened to Cronos after his defeat. In some versions of the story, he is imprisoned with the rest of the Titans. In others, he is imprisoned in Nyx's cave for the rest of eternity. And in other versions, Cronos is liberated from Tartarus by Zeus' orders and become the king of the Elysium. Kronos went on to be known as the devourer of sons and daughters, but also as the god of the harvest, and has been represented by various artists such as Francisco de Goya, Rubens, and Giorgio Vasari. There are other indirect representations of Kronos which stay very close to his character, such as Marvel's intergalactic supervillain Galactus, devourer of worlds. Kronos also makes an appearance in God of War 3 as one of the bosses you must defeat. And of course, we cannot forget the anime Attack on Titans. Although Kronos doesn't make an appearance there, the figure of the Titans ravishing humanity is surely present. The story of Kronos is one of the most important pillars of Greek mythology, and we believe it's a story of colossal proportions. We hope we are not the only ones. Whether you're a fan of classic mythology or not, you have probably heard about her before. Both beautiful and fearsome, she's one of the most iconic mythological characters in ancient Greece. Daughter of Phorcys and Ceto, two sea deities, Medusa was one of the three Gorgon sisters. Her two sisters, Stheno and Euryale, were terrifying monsters with golden wings, bronze claws and wild boar fangs. According to the myth, Medusa was a really beautiful maiden who served in the temple of the goddess Athena as a priestess. She was so beautiful that she even called the attention of the gods, especially Poseidon, who, without really thinking about it much, decided to abuse her. Athena, furious because they had disgraced her temple, punished Medusa by turning her into a horrible monster. So awful that whoever dared to look at her in the eyes would turn into stone. And as if Athena's punishment wasn't enough, Aphrodite, who was jealous of the girl's lovely hair, turned it into poisonous snakes. So Medusa was exiled to Hyperborean's land. As a result of Poseidon's abuse, Medusa got pregnant. This made Athena get even angrier, so she sent the hero Perseus with a sword, with Hades' cap of invisibility, with a mirrored shield so he could avoid the penetrating look of the monster, and with Hermes' winged sandals. Perseus, in his trip to kill Medusa, visited the Graeae, or the Grey Sisters, three sisters that shared one only eye and were capable of answering the most difficult questions. Perseus found out then that the way to end with Medusa's life was by beheading her. Once he was in the Hyperboreans, Perseus decided not to confront Medusa and wait till she was asleep. With the help of Hades' cap of invisibility and Hermes' winged sandals, Perseus got close enough to Medusa without her noticing his presence, and with his sword he cut her head off. Two kids sprang from Medusa's neck, the winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor. The blood shed in the beheading was kept by Athena due to its qualities. Blood from the left side was a powerful poison, while blood from the right side had great healing qualities, and it could even resurrect the dead. Perseus gave Medusa's head to Athena, who placed it in her shield. There are different versions of the story that say Perseus used Medusa's head to turn King Polydectes and his court into stone, and so save his loved one, Andromeda. They also say they used the head to petrify the giant Atlas, the one in charge of holding the sky and the earth. Medusa's presence in art is quite notable, and not only in classic art, where the head with the snake hair can be found sculpted in all kinds of places. Renaissance, Baroque, Modernism. Some of the most famous representations are the marble sculpture by Bernini, Rubens and Caravaggio's paintings, or Cellini's sculpture Perseus with the head of Medusa. In popular culture, Medusa has appeared in several platforms, including video games, movies, cartoons, books, or even as the logo of the famous brand Versace by Gianni Versace. He used the head of the Gorgon to refer to beauty and art as a fundamental part of his work. The myth of Medusa is one of the most powerful ancient myths. Medusa is a symbol of female power and wisdom, and she perfectly represents the oppression of intelligent and strong women. We got petrified with Medusa's story. What about you, TikTakers?
Hey there, Tiktakers! We are pretty sure that among you there are many fans of science fiction stories of mad scientists and other megalomaniacs who play to be gods and end up failing. And maybe you think that they all came from Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, the English writer. But the truth is that the origin of these stories comes from farther back, nothing less than from classical Greece and the myth of Prometheus. Prometheus belonged to the second generation of Titans. He was the son of Oedipus, a descendant of Gaia and Uranus, the primordial Titan who represented the sky, and who was castrated by his other son, Cronus, with the help of Oedipus himself. As for who his mother was, different theories exist depending on the poet telling the story. Many people claim that it was the oceanic climbing, daughter of Oceanus, the Titan of the waters, and Thetis, goddess of fresh water. Although others claim that it was also the sea nymph Asia, patron of the continent and mother of Achilles, the famous hero of the Trojan War. In addition to Prometheus, the couple had 3 more children: Atlas, Epimetheus, and Menicius, an authentic legendary family since each one had their own epic story. Atlas was condemned by Zeus, the king of the gods, to hold the sky on his shoulders. Epimetheus had his role in the myth of Pandora, and Menicius died struck by a lightning that Zeus himself threw during the Titanomachy, the war that faced gods and titans. Belonging to such an epic family, Prometheus was destined to leave his mark in history, especially since, as they say, he was the most cunning and rogue of the 4 brothers. And he wasn't afraid of anything or anyone, not even the gods. He even dared to face the most powerful of them, the king of Olympus, Zeus. And he did it in favor of men. In fact, Prometheus was revered and appreciated by the Greeks because he was the great benefactor of humanity. His story begins at a time when gods and men still lived together and the latter still ignored evils such as disease or suffering. Zeus was named king of Olympus, and among his first decisions was to define which honors and functions corresponded to the gods and which to humans. He gave this task to the Titan Prometheus, and he accepted it, but with the idea of deceiving Zeus to benefit humans. For this, he invented the sacred sacrifice. He killed and dismembered an ox and separated it into 2 parts. One of them contained only the bones but disguised under a palatable layer of fat. In the other, he put all the meat and the edible part, camouflaged on the skin and the viscera, which gave it an unpleasant appearance. Zeus was in charge of choosing which part would be for the gods, and he fell into the trap selecting the part of fat and bones. Since then, in sacrifices, the Greeks burned the bones of the animals to offer them to the gods and ate the meat. But of course, this couldn't end well. Zeus raged in anger over Prometheus' trick and decided to punish mankind by depriving them of fire. Without it, men could not cook meat and were forced to eat it raw, like animals. Given this, Prometheus took pity on them and decided to intervene once again. He climbed Mount Olympus, and from the fort of Hephaestus, the god of fire and patron of metallurgy, Prometheus stole a spark, a seed of fire. He carried it on the stem of a reed, a bush that burns very slowly, and handed it to men who were able to reheat and cook the food. And then came Zeus' revenge, even more terrible and twisted. First, he punished mankind forever through Pandora's box, another very interesting myth that we have already seen, TikTakers. The second part of the punishment fell on Prometheus. He had him taken to the Caucasus, a mountain range between southern Russia and northern Turkey, where he was chained by Hephaestus and sent an eagle to devour his liver. Being immortal, Prometheus' liver regenerated again every night, and the next morning the eagle returned to eat it again and again. This torture should have lasted forever, but Hercules, who on one of his trips passed by, took pity on him and freed him, killing the eagle with an arrow. As a reminder of his condemnation and to avoid doing it again, Prometheus made a metal ring and attached a piece of the rock to which he was chained, and carried it with him forever. Hence, the custom of men to wear rings as a souvenir of important events. The myth of Prometheus serves to remind men what happens when they play God and aspire to powers that are beyond their means, like creating artificial life, as it happens to the leading scientist of the novel Frankenstein, also called the modern Prometheus. In fact, one of the versions of the legend places the Titan as the creator of human beings. This would be the one with the most influence on Mary Shelley and other writers that made their own version of the myth. such as Bernard Shaw with Pygmalion or Gustav Meyrink with the Golem. And thus, although we aren't crazy scientists, we can also draw a conclusion from the history of Prometheus. That is, although sometimes we want to become the hero, we shouldn't play with forces beyond us. He's incredibly strong, he has enormous horns, his head is that of a bull, but his body is human. He is the Minotaur. What is his true story? The Minotaur is the son of Pasiphae, the daughter of the god Helios and the nymph Crete. She, together with Minos, one of the offsprings of Zeus himself, reigned over the territory of Crete. King Minos always boasted of having the favor of the gods, and to prove it, he prayed to them asking for a gift, something that no one else could have. Poseidon, the god of the sea, heard their prayers, and from the foam of the waves on the beach, he made a majestic and slender white bull emerge. Minos was fascinated with the animal, but the god ordered him to sacrifice it in his honor. The monarch was delighted with the bull, so much so that he was unable to kill it and instead sacrificed a different one, hoping that Poseidon wouldn't notice. But he did. The god, enraged by such disrespect, went in search of the help of Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and love. She didn't hesitate to accept and cursed Pasiphae, taking advantage of the fact that he hadn't paid homage to her as he should, and created an irrepressible carnal desire for the majestic bull of Crete. The queen, unable to satisfy his divinely inflicted desires, turned in desperation to the inventor and architect Daedalus, together with his son Icarus. He made a wooden cow and covered it with real cow skin. The queen was placed inside, and the inventor took her to the meadow where the bull grazed, and he had a carnal relation with Pasiphae, thinking that she was a real cow. Minos' wife became pregnant, and he didn't discover what the queen had done until she gave birth to a half-calf, half-human monstrosity. Upon hearing the story, the king didn't hesitate to enslave Daedalus and his son for their part in the affair, but was unable to do anything to his wife. Pasiphae wanted to take care of the little Minotaur and was able to do it while he was little, but soon he grew up becoming very aggressive and uncontrollable. Since his mother could no longer take care of him, the monster began to look for his own food and ended up finding his ideal food in humans. Minos found out and, ashamed and on the advice of an oracle, ordered Daedalus and his son to build a huge labyrinth to lock up the fearsome Minotaur in it. While his stepson's complicated cell was being built, the monarch discovered that his only human and male child had been murdered. The Athenians had ambushed him. They had killed him because he was too good at the Panathenaic Games, sports events that were held every 4 years in Athens, and he always won them all, leaving them in a ridiculous situation. Minos was enraged and immediately set sail for revenge. The Athenians weren't prepared for such an attack and were defeated. The king of Crete forced them to pay a tribute of 7 maidens and 7 young men every 9 years, as payment for the death of his son. These tributes would be sent to the labyrinth to feed the Minotaur. One year, Theseus, son of the Athenian king, had had enough of the situation and decided that he himself would go to Crete as part of the next offering to kill the Minotaur. He promised his father that if he died, the ship would return with black sails, but if he defeated the beast, the ship's sails would be white. Theseus traveled with the other tributes, and when they arrived in Crete, they were locked up in the garden of Ariadne and Phaedra, the daughters of Minos. The first of them fell in love with Theseus as soon as she saw him. Fearing that her beloved might die at the hands of her half-brother, she turned to Daedalus for advice. Then she ran to Theseus. Ariadne gave him a ball of thread that he should tie to the door of the labyrinth in order to know the way back. Furthermore, she provided him with a small sword with which to kill the monster. All this in exchange for taking her with him on his trip back to Athens, because her father would kill her when he found out what she had done. Theseus accepted the help of the princess and tied one end of the ball of thread in the entrance and ran in search of the Minotaur. He found the beast in the far corner of the maze and slew him with Ariadne's sword. Then he just had to find the other tributes and follow the thread back to the exit. The hero escaped from Crete and took Ariadne with him as promised, but he also kidnapped her sister Phaedra, with whom he had fallen in love. To Ariadne's surprise, Theseus abandoned her on the island of Naxos and made his way back to Athens with Phaedra to marry her. The Minotaur's killer made a terrible mistake. He forgot to change the ship's black sails for white ones, and his father, seeing the ship in the distance, thought that his son had died and he killed himself because he was unable to bear the grief. The legend of the Minotaur is very old and there are several versions of it. His figure is found in several of artistic work. There have also been multiple adaptations of the monster's story to the literary world, such as The Tale of Beauty and the Beast. Without going too far, the legend of the Minotaur has been taken to the movies, video games, anime, and series. Without a doubt, the Minotaur has become one of the most famous mythological beasts of all time. Surely you have heard many times about the Oedipus complex, the famous theory of psychoanalysis formulated by Freud and that explains the behavior of children towards their parents in childhood. But do you know why it has this name? Who was really Oedipus? Oedipus is a character from classical Greece. He was king of Thebes, a city located about 50 kilometers from Athens, which in ancient times was the capital of the region. His story was collected by several classical authors, although the best-known version was the one written by the tragic poet Sophocles in his Oedipus Rex around the year 430 before Christ. The legend begins with his father, Laius, the king of Thebes at that time. The monarch was unable to have a child with his wife Jocasta, despite trying for several years. Desperate, he went to the Oracle of Delphi, a sacred temple for consulting the gods, seeking a solution. Instead, he was met with a terrible prophecy that his son would one day kill his father and marry his mother. Impressed, Laius decided to keep the prophecy a secret and give up having children. But finally, one night, under the influence of alcohol, he ended up conceiving Oedipus. Laius feared that the prophecy would come true, and to avoid it, he decided to get rid of him at birth. He handed him over to a shepherd to leave him on Mount Cathaeron, but first he pierced his feet with the clasp of his tunic, so that no one would want to adopt him. However, our protagonist was lucky and was found by other shepherds who handed him over to Polybus, the king of Corinth, another city farther north. Since they had no children, he and his wife Merope decided to adopt him, naming him Oedipus, which means swollen foot. He grew up not knowing he was adopted and became a boy known for his great courage. But his companions made fun of him because they said that someone so intrepid couldn't be the son of the naive Polybus. To clear up doubts, he decided to go to consult the Oracle of Delphi, and he prophesied something he didn't expect, that he would kill his father and marry his mother. Frightened and trying to avoid the prophecy in every way, Oedipus fled from Corinth to get away from Polybus and Merope, who he thought were his parents, and headed to Thebes. But fortune wanted him to meet Laius, his biological father, at a crossroads. His herald ordered him to give way, but Oedipus refused, and in retaliation they killed one of his horses. This made Oedipus very angry, who ended up murdering the herald and Laius himself, without knowing that it was the king of Thebes and his own father. He continued on his way and he met the Sphinx. This, being with the face of a woman, the body of a lion, and the wings of a bird, had been sent by the gods to torment the population of Thebes. It destroyed the crops, and to everyone it met, it would pose a riddle, and if they didn't succeed, they found death. No one was able to solve it, but when he found Oedipus, it asked him, "What is the only creature that walks on all fours at dawn, on 2 at noon, and on 3 at sunset?" And he answered that humans, because in his childhood he crawls on his hands and knees. When he's an adult, he walks on 2 feet. And in the evening of his life, when he becomes an old man, he uses a cane, which is equivalent to walking with 3 feet. The Sphinx went mad with anger and threw itself from the top of the mountain. Oedipus was received as a savior in Thebes. As a prize, he was named the new king and married Jocasta, widow of Laius and his real mother. With her, he had 4 children, Polynices, Eteocles, Ismene, and Antigone. Soon after, a terrible plague epidemic devastated the city. To find out the cause of this punishment from the gods, Oedipus once again consulted the Oracle of Delphi, who told him that the plague would continue until the murderer of the previous king of Thebes, Laius, was found and convicted. From then on, Oedipus began an arduous investigation and moved heaven and earth to find the murderer of the previous monarch. Finally, thanks to the help of Tiresias, a blind soothsayer, he discovered the bitter truth. He had not only killed his father, the king of Thebes, but also had married his own mother. When Jocasta found out, overcome with shame, she took her own life. Before her corpse, Oedipus took one of the brooches from her dress and gouged out his eyes with it. In his penance, he decided to exile himself from Thebes, only allowing his daughter Antigone to accompany him to help him. He wandered aimlessly like a beggar, until Theseus, the mythical hero who defeated the Minotaur, welcomed him to Colonna, where he died sometime later. Like many of the stories of classical Greece, the merit of the Oedipus legend is in the great symbolism it contains. Years later, it serves as a perfect representation of one of the most well-known and mentioned psychoanalytic theories of our time.
If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and if you want to see more Draw My Life videos, subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode!